One of the most powerful study techniques you could use to skyrocket your performance is the active recall method. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can actually take the active recall study technique and even make it more efficient and effective by using artificial intelligence technology such as Bevinzey. So the first thing we want to examine is what is active recall. Now, active recall is a highly effective study method that involves actively retrieving information from memory as opposed to passively reviewing notes or rereading text. So in other words, instead of simply reading through your study materials with the hopes of pushing information into your brain until it sticks, what active recall actually does is it challenges you to test your knowledge by asking you questions and forcing your brain to recall the answers. So now that we know what active recall is, let's explore some of the key principles that makes the active recall study method so effective. Now, the first thing we want to really understand is when it comes to the active recall method, it involves actively generating answers or explanations rather than simply recognizing information. So once again, this forces the brain to retrieve and reconstruct knowledge. And when that happens, it results in strengthening the neural connections. So the next principle we want to look at is practicing recall at spaced intervals. So not only are you going to be answering questions and explaining the concepts that you're studying, but also you're going to be doing that at regular spaced intervals. So for example, if you did it today, you'll do it in a week's time or in a month's time as well. And that spaced intervals allows you to cement the information in the long-term memory through the process of consolidation. Now, the next principle we want to look at is the active study recall method also results in identifying gaps in knowledge. And so by doing this, you end up focusing your study efforts on the most difficult or poorly understood concepts. So we've looked at what active recall is. We've also looked at the key principles of active recall. Now, the next thing we want to look at is some of the effective active recall techniques that you can use. Now, the first one will be using flashcards or practice questions. So you can make your own flashcards. You could do that physically. Just find a sheet of paper or a 3x5 card and then put your questions on one side and the answers on the other side. Or you can actually use practice questions. Now, the practice questions you can actually generate yourself, or better still, you can use technology. So in a few minutes, I'm going to show you how you can quickly create these practice questions using Bevinzey, which is an AI-powered learning platform. And so the second technique would be explaining concepts out loud or teaching it to someone else. So even if you don't have someone you want to explain this to, you can do that by yourself in your room. Just talk it out loud. Explain the concept as best as you can. And when you notice any gaps, just go back to the material, reread it, and then you are going to be strengthening those neural connections. Now, the next technique is writing summaries or outlines without referring to notes. This is very similar to teaching someone, except that this time you're actually going to be writing out the explanation or writing out the questions, and you're going to be doing this once again without referring to the notes. So you take a sheet of paper, you write down what you heard in class or the details of what you read in the material that you were studying, or you could also do this online. You could simply use a word processing document like Word or Google Docs, put down your recollection of what the key points are that you heard in class about a specific concept, and then you check it with your notes and see how much you were able to recall accurately, and then you fill in the gaps. So now the next technique is answering practice questions before reviewing the material. So I already talked about practice questions in the first technique, but in this particular point, the emphasis is on answering practice questions even before you begin studying the material. So before you begin actually even reviewing the content, you generate a bunch of practice questions related to the content you're about to study. You answer those questions, see how well you're able to answer those questions, and then you go back to the material that you're reviewing and then see how closely aligned your answers are with what it's actually supposed to be, and then you fill in the gap. So as you can tell, one of the best ways to practice active recall is by answering questions about the material that you are studying. And this is where I'm going to show you how you can use something like Bevinzey's question generator to improve your process and make it very efficient. So the way Bevinzey's question generator works is it's able to generate a variety of question types based on the content you provided. And so you could do multiple choice, true or false, short answer, or fill in the blank questions. You can even do higher order thinking questions. So now let's quickly take a look at how you can use Bevinzey to generate some of these questions that will help you study more efficiently using the active recall technique. So what you want to do is go to bevinzey.com, and then once you are on the home page, click on services after you have logged in, and then you want to click on the text to questions module. Now there are several modules in there, but you want to click on the text to questions and it will bring you to this really elegant interface. So now the next thing you want to do is either paste in the content you want to study or upload it as a Word, PDF, or a text file. I'm just going to copy and paste. So the content we're about to study is covering the history and civilization of the Roman Empire. So we're going to master this together. And now one of the techniques that we talked about is generating the questions even before you look at the material. So this is how Bevinzey would help you do this really expeditiously. Now the variety of question types you could use, we have multiple choice, true or false, short answer, fill in the blank, and higher order thinking questions. Let's start out with some multiple choice questions. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pick 10 questions and we click on generate. You don't need to put in any prompt, you just click generate. And so now you have the questions. So you have 10 multiple choice questions even before you looked at the material. So let me quickly illustrate how you could use this process very expeditiously. You could export this. You could export it as a text file, a PDF, or a Word. Let's just do a PDF. So I'm going to click on export. And now we have the PDF version. So these are the questions. As you notice, it's multiple choice. That's what we selected. We have the question and then we have the distractors. And these are really 10 nice, elegant questions. Now you could also simply answer the questions in this particular interface. But the beauty about it is now we can simply click on this eye icon and it will give us the answers as well. So I'm also going to export the answers. And so now we have both versions. So a very good process would be simply to go through this content and then see how well you do. And then you go back and check the answers. And then even better still, once you're done checking the answers, you go back to the original material and begin to be more focused in understanding how the answer was arrived at. So you will look at question 1, you would see in the content what the answer actually is and why the answer is D. And then also you will take a moment to understand when the other distractors actually apply. So that's how you go deeper very quickly. And that's how you're able to build those neural connections that help increase long-term memory. So that's one version. Now the beauty about using something like this Bevinzey AI tool is you don't simply need to do multiple choice. You could also do a true or false. So let's just quickly look at that. So now we have another version. Then we just download this as a TXT file this time so that you can see what that looks like. So that's what the TXT file looks like. Same thing. And then once again, if you click on the eye icon, you have the answers beneath it. You can export that as well. And so the beauty about this is you can have all the different types of questions that will help expand the various ways in which you need to recollect the information and also synthesize the information that you are learning. So now let's look at what the short answer questions are going to look like. So just click on generate. And as you can notice, in just a few seconds, you have all your questions instead of taking maybe several hours and maybe days in some instances. So once again, you can export this as a PDF or a Word document or a text file. And so now the other thing that is also happening is you're also building your repository of learning material. So this is something that you can compile, and then later on when it's time for exams or you need to be having a more intense study session, you can simply add these to the things that you can use as material to cover. So here we have the questions, and then we can also bring in the questions with the answers by clicking on the eye icon. We'll export that as well. So there you have really nice, right? Really nice. So you have the answer to the question, And once again, in this particular instance, maybe a Word document would have been preferred because then you can just type your answer beneath the question and then go check the answer in your question with the answers sheet. And then also you can go back to the original material. You always need to go back to the original material to make sure that you're filling in the gaps in your knowledge. And then by doing that, you're really going to be continually improving your ability to build those necessary neural connections that help with understanding the material and also ensuring that you have long-term retention. The long-term retention is very key in making sure that you're mastering the content that you are studying. I mean, the other options, I'm not going to go through all of them, otherwise the videos will get really long. But maybe let me just mention this. The higher order thinking questions, they really involve a lot more critical thinking skills. So let's go back and wrap up the discussion about the active recall method. But I just wanted to demonstrate how you can use a tool like Bevinzey to really speed up the process, make it really efficient, and then just ensure that you are focusing on really mastering the material that you need to study. So So let's look at some tips for effective active recall, especially using a tool like Bevinzey. The first tip will be to regularly generate questions. So consistency is key here, especially when it comes to active recall. And so you want to make a habit of generating questions for each new topic or chapter that you study. Now, the next tip I want to share is you want to mix up the question type. So you want to vary the types of questions that you answer to challenge your brain in different ways and deepen your understanding of the material. So the next tip I want to share is you want to study in short sessions. So what research shows is that short, focused, steady sessions are more effective than the long, drawn-out sessions. So in another video, maybe talk about how you can use things like the Pomodoro technique as ways to really spice up and make your study sessions more effective. And so the next tip you want to look at is there's benefit in collaborating with your peers. So share your generated questions with study partners or classmates, and in doing this, you're going to foster some discussion and also learn from each other. So we just looked at some key elements of the active recall method, and the active recall method is a really powerful learning technique that can help you effectively learn and retain information. And by leveraging technology like Bevinzey's question generator, you can easily create tailored questions to practice active recall and take your learning to the next level. So I want to encourage you to start using this feature today and experience the difference in your study sessions. So if you have any questions about using artificial intelligence for learning or teaching, or generative AI training for institutions, or any questions about Bevinzey in general, then you could contact us at our 1-800-242-3110 number, or go to our website bevinzey.com, or send us an email at info@bevinzey.com. So if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content on effective learning strategies and how you can use technology to really enhance those learning strategies. Until next time, happy learning.